like imagine now has a picture of somebody and they've got a power meter on the photo. So it's becoming more and more prevalent. Yeah. You know, like with the Garmin Chipotle team, they're sponsored by PowerTap, so those guys are going to be using them. The Cervelo team is sponsored by Quark, so those guys will use them. You know, the Team High Road Columbia, they're sponsored by SRM, so they'll have them. You know, Solana has got SRM, so they'll probably have them as well. So we'll see a lot more this year. Right now, Daniel Lloyd, and he lives in England. He's a British guy, super nice guy, and he was doing these hill climbs at the end of the year. Every year they have these hill climbs that are like 2 minutes long, a minute and a half long, and so you win this hill climb and you get like 1,000 pounds sterling, which is, you know, like nearly $2,000 bucks. You know, US about 1,500. And so he called me up and was like, man, you know, I can do this one in the morning, I can do this one in the afternoon, I can do this one the next day in the morning, afternoon, I can win like, you know, $6,000, $7,000 if I do win all these things. And he's like, what do I do? You know, leading up to this event. I'm like, well, how long are you? He's like, oh, like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. I'm like, dude, don't do anything. Like, sit on your couch for all week long, all right? Don't train at all, because you need to come into these things totally rested, with all your glycogen stores completely full, and have tons of anaerobic capacity. And he's like, you're crazy, dude. I'm like, no, don't do anything. The day before, I want you to go out and do a couple hard intervals, open up your legs, and then go and do it. He's like, okay, man, this is a lot of money. You better be right. I'm gonna be really pissed. All right, so he goes out, cracks out all of his best numbers on both those days. Like, not only wins them, but like sets records of these things. Wins all kinds of money. He's like, oh my God, this is amazing. I didn't even train for a week and I won all these races. I'm like, yeah, it's all about anaerobic capacity. They're really short, hard hills. Now, would you want to do that going into a stage race? No. All right, so going into a big stage race, you're going to have to do more. You're going to have more fitness. All right, so going into a long road race, a century ride, anything like that, that's where you're going to have to go into it. You can actually go into it a little more fatigued even, because fitness is more important at that point. All right? Shorter events, track events, hill climbs, you know, I'm going to do a criterium with a short hard hill in it. That's going to be more of this anaerobic capacity stuff. But the other side of it is you're going to have fitness as well. To really rest and recover. So that's a really key part of it, is like the time that you take to rest and recover allows you to recharge your battery, so that then you can come back into January, into December, and then what do you do in December and January, and February even? You only decharge your battery down to 97%, and you always recharge to 100. Decharge down to 96, but come back to 100. Never let it go below that point, and keep it close to 100%, because then when the racing season starts, you're already at 100%, and you've got a lot of fitness. So you can still train hard in the off season, but give yourself more rest period, so that allows you to keep that battery charged up. So the question is, you know, how much should we rest for our testing? And that's a good question, because you know, you always want, when you do tests, you want to make sure that you're being consistent. You know, I'm always starting on the same road, always in the same loop. I start my test in the same house. You know, I'm not going to do my test one day when it's 30-mile-an-hour winds, and then the next 6 weeks I'm going to do it, it's going to be like no wind. I'm going to try and be as consistent as possible. It's not always perfect to have like the perfect rest amount of time between tests and on that test day. So what I do is I do treat it as a race. So like the 2 days before your test, I'll ride really easy. All right. The day before a test, I do kind of like a little warm up and a little tune up. And so I usually do 3 times 1 minute, and then 3 hard sprints, and then like really easy hour and a half, and then test on that next day. For me, the best training is what we call block training. Most of us can't do it because we're constrained by the work week. We've got to train Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and our weekends are really big. But if you're not constrained so much by that, then 3 days really hard, 2 days off, 3 days really hard, 2 days off, or whatever it is, you train in blocks. And then that way you can really fatigue yourself to the maximum. Alright, so maybe like you might take 5 days as hard as you can, and then you can't even do any more, and then you take 3 or 4 days super easy, and then you go really hard again for 5 days. I had one client who was a doctor, and he in 1 week where he was he did research, so he did like 20 hours of work and had a really slack week that week. The next week, he was the attending physician in this super busy hospital, so he worked like 80 hours a week that week. So the week that he was doing research, he trained like 30 hours that week. Like killed himself, rode to work, rode after work, rode like crazy that whole week. And the week that he was the attending physician, he didn't do anything. He didn't even ride his bike, you know, and just slept and worked. And then the next week, guess what? He came back and his muscles were all recovered and fresh again. And he killed himself the next week. So literally he had a week on and a week off. And it was amazing. And the guy did awesome. He was a really great cyclist. But, so it depends a little bit too on your schedule. What he's asking is like, you know, when do I take my rest periods? And kind of one of the things that Joe Creel's done a really good job with the training Bible is kind of laid out the whole periodization. The classic school of thought is 3 hard weeks and 1 week of rest. You know, what we find is that it doesn't, that's the beauty of kind of having the power meter stuff, is you can actually figure out, like, maybe I do need to do 1 week on, 1 week off, or maybe it's 2 weeks on, 1 week off. So the way to do it is kind of come back to thinking about, start out with 3 on, 1 off, and just see how it works. You may get to that 4th week, and you may find, wow, you know, 1, I feel pretty good. Alright, so I'm listening to my body. 2, I'm looking at my chart, and I had a really good ride and cracked out some really good numbers yesterday, so let me try some more workouts this week. So you're using then the workouts that you're doing in that 4th week. If you're hitting the numbers you want to hit, then by all means, do that 4th week. Alright? At that point, you may be at the end of that 4th week and say, well, you know what? I still feel pretty good. You may do a 5th week. You know? I don't take any clients or any of my athletes don't do more than 5 weeks on. So if we get to 5 weeks and they've done 5 weeks, we take a mandatory rest week on the 5th week.
If you're in the real world, a lot of rest weeks find you.
Yeah.
So I found that I can go, you know, ride the weekend hard, ride the spin bike one day, ride Tuesday and Wednesday hard, ride the spin bike a couple days. I can do that for a long time, and then work or family or sickness, something finds you, and then you just start up again. So it's like trying to stay to 3 weeks on, 1 week off. It's a little futile. I mean, I found it futile after 15 years. But I could just, if I just do my, you know, my little routine, something finds you.
Yeah. And it's so true, and it's funny how life works that way. All of a sudden, this rest week will just come out of nowhere, and oh, you know, I've got a, you know, business thing I've got to do somewhere, and I don't get to ride for a week, or kids get sick, and you get sick, or whatever. Then you have that rest week that's kind of built into life.
And then if you run into 4 weeks or 5 weeks where you haven't had a break,
then you take
it.
Yeah. Then you get sick the next week.
Yeah.